our revered guest, Professor M. Govinda Rahul, the alumni present, faculty of the department, and dear students. We gather here today for the 4th Bidyadhar Misra Memorial Lecture, which is organized by the Alumni Association of the Department of Analytical and Applied Economics. To start off, I would request all of you to kindly stand up for paying respect to the university theme song. For the 4th Bidyadhar Misra Memorial Lecture. Bidyadhar Misra, Professor Bidyadhar Misra is the founder professor of this department, and we owe our existence to Professor Bidyadhar Misra. May I request the guests on the dais to kindly light the auspicious lamp and offer flowers before the portrait of our founder professor, Professor Bidyadhar Misra. Department of Analytical and Applied Economics, one of the oldest departments of this university, Utkal University, the mother university of the state. And we gather here today for the 4th Bidyadhar Misra Memorial Lecture. And for this, the previous lectures have been delivered by very eminent, very prominent economists of our times. The first lecture was delivered by Professor Prasant Patnaik. The second one by the current Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India, Dr. Michael G. Patra. The third one by the former RBI Governor, Professor Y.D. Reddy. And today we have with us Professor M. Govinda Rao, who is going to deliver the 4th memorial lecture. I take this opportunity to introduce Professor Rao to all of you. But before I introduce Professor Rao to you all, as a mark of our gratitude and respect to Professor Rao for agreeing to come over all the way from Bangalore to join us on this auspicious day, I would like to offer a bouquet of flowers on behalf of the entire fraternity of Analytical and Applied Economics Department, requesting the student volunteers to offer a bouquet of flowers to all the guests on the dais. Professor M. Govinda Rao, Professor Durga Shankar Patnaik, Chairman Postgraduate Council, Dr. Himanshu Sekhar Raut and Professor Subhas Kumar sir. Thank you. A few words about Professor M. Govinda Rao. Though Professor Rao needs no introduction to the students of economics, at the cost of repeating myself, I would like to say that Dr. M. Govinda Rao is currently the Councillor of the Takshashila Institution, Bangalore. He is also a member of the Advisory Board, Centre for Public Policy, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. His past positions include member of the 14th Finance Commission during 13-14, the Director of National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, New Delhi from 2003 to 2013, 10 long years. The Director of the Institute for Social and Economic Change, Bangalore from 1998 to 2002 and Fellow of Research School of Pacific and Asian Studies, Australian National University, Canberra, Australia. He was also a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister from 2004 to 2013. His advisory roles include Chairman of the Study Group on Taxation of Services, Government of India, a member of the Financial Sector Legislative Reforms Commission, member High-Level Expert Committee on Universal Health Coverage, member High-Level Expert Committee on the Efficient Management of Public Expenditure, and member Expert Group on Decentralized Planning. Interestingly, Professor M. Govinda Rao obtained his PhD in economics from a university of the state. He got it from the Sambalpur University in the year 1979. That is his connect with the state, for which he could not say no to our invite. He was a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Maryland. Currently, he is the member of the governing body of the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, New Delhi, Madras Institute of Development Studies, Chennai, and Asian Development Research Institute, Patna, Executive Board member of Madras School of Economics, Chennai, and member, Advisory Board Center for Public Policy, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Professor Rao is a prolific author who has authored 18 books and monographs and over 130 articles in referred journals and edited books on tax and expenditure policies, on macroeconomics of fiscal policy and fiscal decentralization and federalism. Professor Rao's latest book is Studies in Indian Public Finance, which is being published by Oxford University Press, which will come out in 2022. He is also the managing editor of an online bi-monthly referred journal, which is Indian Public Policy Review. This is in short. The speaker, from whom we are going to listen today on a very interesting and contemporary topic which affects all of us, not only the students of economics, but every common man: sustainable fiscal policy in India, the post-pandemic challenges. Besides Professor Rao, on the dais we have Professor Subhas Kumar, who is the President of the Alumni Association. He is an alumnus of this department. He has superannuated as the principal of the Pranath Autonomous College and also was a professor, chair professor in Niswas. We have as the chief guest Professor Durga Shankar Patnaik, who is a very revered senior professor of this university in the Department of Geology. He is the chairman postgraduate council. He is a very learned senior professor and also an author of several articles in journals as well as books. We have Dr. Himanshu Sekhar Rao, the head of the Department of Analytical and Applied Economics now. We are today celebrating, in fact, the life and achievements of Professor Bidyadhar Misra, the founder professor of Department of Analytical and Applied Economics. And this department came into existence in the year 1963 as the Department of Analytical and Applied Economics. Professor Misra was the professor and head of the department for a long 17 years, from 1960 till 1977. Thereafter, he became the vice chancellor of this university and completed a tenure of 3 years. There is another side to Professor Misra. He was also a writer in Odia, and for that he was the recipient of the Odisha Sahitya Academy Award in the year 1999. The department and all of us owe our standing, the position, whatever we are today, to Professor Bidyadhar Misra. So therefore, to celebrate his life and achievements, we are here together. Thank you all of you, whoever has thought it proper and thought it important enough to join us on this auspicious afternoon. Thank you so much. May I now request the chief guest of this afternoon, Professor Durga Shankar Patnaik, Chairman Postgraduate Council of the University, to deliver his address to the august audience. Professor Durga Shankar Patnaik.
Esteemed Chief Speaker of this seminar, Professor Govinda, President of Alumni Association of Applied and Analytical Economics Department, Professor Subhas Kumar, Head of the Department, Dr. Rao, Convener, Govinda in general, all distinguished alumni of Department of Applied and Analytical Economics as well as Fiscal University, research scholars, and beloved students. So this is a congregation of economists, and I am a non-economist. But I will tell something from a non-economist perspective, the common man's perspective, which the economist should ponder over. First of all, I congratulate the department to pay obeisance to its founder, Professor Bidyadhar Misra, a noted economist of its time In fact, repeating the great tradition of India, we pay homage to, we express our gratitude to the creators. The worshipping the persons for whom we owe our existence is a great Indian tradition. I was just had a glimpse, I had a glimpse of the biodata of Professor Bidyadhar Misra. I have heard his name when I was in college. So, Professor Bidyadhar Misra, Professor Sadashiv Misra, Professor Bidyadhar Misra, Professor Fiscal, all noted economists who had shaped the economic destiny of Odisha. Why Professor Govinda will be delivering the keynote address. So it will be, he will speak from a specialist angle. From a generalist angle, I just want to tell something. So our forefathers, the great nationalist leaders who gave us our constitution. The preamble of Indian constitution envisaged to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic and political. So economic justice, dispensation of economic justice is the foremost duty of India, this nation. But how far we have been able to dispense economic justice to the common people? Maybe we may be happy with the statistical figure, the per capita income of India is rising, and particularly after Green Revolution and White Revolution, the economy of India is just leaping forward. But at the same time, the difference between the poor man, the poorest man of India, and the richest man of India is increasing exponentially. There is also a huge increase in the black money. So in our time, we were just amazed to see crorepati. So if he is a crorepati, then we see, okay, he is a very rich person. But nowadays, crorepati, I think it is just comes to the middle. I was just glancing through newspaper. An IS officer of Jharkhand cadre, a woman IS officer of Jharkhand cadre, had amassed 58 crores. That money, 58 crores, maybe more. Then, in Odisha, when there is a mining scam, so the mine owners of Odisha, they have amassed more than 2,000 crores of rupees by illegally tilling the mineral resources of our country. When a common man is struggling to get 2 square feet a day, get proper clothing and treatment, these people are swindling our nation's wealth. So, if say India, which was envisaged to be a socialist country by the makers of our constitution, because that was the most appropriate method at that time to dispense economic justice to all people. But now we are digressing from their path. India is fast heading to become a capitalist economy. ଆମର ଗୋଟେ ଓଡ଼ିଆରେ କଥା ଅଛି ଯେ କିଛି ନ ଖାଇଛି ସେ ଉପାସରେ ଶୋ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି କଣ
ପଖାଳ ଖାଇଛି ଦୌଡ଼
ପଖାଳ ଖାଉଛି ଯେ
ଦୌଡ଼ ଖାଉ
ଦୌଡ଼ ଖାଉ. So that means we are just enriching the rich people and impoverishing the poor people. So, it is a healthy sign of Indian economy. Will it not lead to vociferous or divisional tendencies in India? %10 of our population, 10% of people are enjoying 90% of our resources. So, this capitalism is just a suit of of this economic aspect. So, my submission to the economist and future economist sitting over here to ponder over whether India needs a socialist economy or a capitalist economy or a mixed economy. So which will be beneficial to the majority of population. Another thing which is a great concern nowadays. In our time, we did not know about this cryptocurrency. Now, in newspaper, some chief engineer who was going to retire, it was found that he had the 4 crores of cryptocurrency. So this is this cryptocurrency, it will pose great challenge to our Indian economy. As you know, bad money drives out good money out of population. So ultimately, this parallel economy is going to play disaster, and ultimately poor, lower middle class and middle class will suffer. I think the learned disciples of Professor Bidyadhar Misra and their disciples and the future president and future economist of the country will delve into the matter and give us an economy which is healthy, long-lasting, and beneficial to everyone. Thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you, sir. In fact, you have flagged off certain issues, economic issues such as inequality, corruption, and so on, which affects everybody in the society. And as students of economics, everyone should spare a thought as to what one can do. One cannot achieve everything, but everyone can do something which will add up to cumulatively which will add up to cure these ills. A few words once more about Professor Bidyadhar Misra. With Professor Mishra's research interests were agricultural economics, rural development, development economics, and economics of poverty, about which Professor Patnaik has also spoken, that the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer. And during Professor Bidyadhar Mishra's time, statistics was introduced as a paper into the postgraduate syllabus, and subsequently mathematical economics and econometrics. So once again, paying heartfelt regards to the memories of Bidyadhar Mishra, may I take this opportunity to invite Professor M. Govinda now to deliver the lecture, the 4th Bidyadhar Mishra Memorial Lecture on Sustainable Fiscal Policy in India, the post-pandemic challenges. Professor M. Govinda. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Kumar, Professor Patnaik, Professor Rao, Nara, members of the Alumni Association, teachers, and my dear students. I'm indeed grateful for being invited to deliver the 4th Professor Bidyadhar Misra Memorial Lecture. Coming to Govinda is like coming to my second home. It's almost 50 years ago that I moved to Orissa to do my PhD in Sambalpur University. And in fact, the Sambalpur University was the first university to introduce mathematics, economics, and mathematics, which became an important subject. And I spent almost 1.5 years in Orissa. Many people wonder why from Ahmedabad I came to Orissa rather than anywhere else. That's a big story. In fact, Professor Lagnawala wanted me to go to Bombay and do my PhD. Professor Brahmananda wanted me to go and do my PhD. But I chose Sambalpur and PhD here. And incidentally, I should be delivering the Lagnawala Memorial Lecture this year. They have requested me, I have agreed. So I am most grateful to the Alumni Association of the Department of Analytical and Applied Economics for inviting me for this. And I am particularly grateful for the reason that I have this occasion to speak. I will take the 4th Memorial Lecture after 3 very illustrious economists. I will be able to speak about the social choice theory the way Prashant Patnaik would have done. I wouldn't be able to give you very sophisticated models on mathematical, on macroeconomics or monetary economics, the way my Patra would have done. Of course, with Dr. Reddy and we have worked together in the Finance Commission, and we have been continuing to discuss things about issues of federalism. And in fact, actually the last week he called me and said that now everything is becoming centralized. Now we should create an institution for discussing something like a National Institute for State Studies, something like that. I said, well, we will discuss this as we go along. But anyway, and today Professor Patnaik raised quite a number of interesting issues. But for most of you, the young students, this issue is much more germane. The question that as an economist I would ask is reducing the incomes of the rich going to increase the incomes of the poor? My question is much more direct. By reducing the incomes of the rich, are you going to increase the incomes of the poor? If you want to increase the incomes of the poor, there is a separate set of policies that you need to deal with. That is poverty elimination. So the question comes very clearly, inequality versus poverty. What is important for you? Now, it is the rich man who creates the jobs. Are we going to impact on his incentives? Illegal means is something which is obviously nobody wants to do. Most of you are looking for jobs after your graduation. You should be looking for things where you get jobs. So investment has to come in. But at the same time, poor has to be taken care of. This actually has a much larger ramification. Because for a long time, we thought that the tax policy is something where you can reduce inequalities. 10 years of research in the United States by Beckman and Alumni showed that American tax system is not progressive. In Chile, the work that was done showed that Chilean tax system is regressive. And in India, there are hardly 3 to 4% of the people who pay income tax. So when you use the tax policy to reduce inequality, you are basically dealing with these people rather than. So in other words, in terms of the policy, if you really are talking about poverty alleviation, looking after the poor, empowerment, and getting jobs for the people, you should be looking at the expenditure side of the budget rather than the tax side of it. I thought, it's nice to hear about how if you are able to get rid of, reduce inequality and poverty together, excellent. There is nothing like it. But if you are given a choice, I would see that because poverty anywhere is a curse everywhere. And I would like. Now in this connection, I would like to pay my respect to Professor Bidyadhar Misra. And his work was micro-relevant. Tremendous amount of work he did on village life, past and present, and beggar problem in Cuttack. In fact, there are studies on the beggar problem in Cuttack, tribal development projects, problem of small and marginal farmers, and Professor Vitali has already talked about his contribution to agricultural farmers. So my own 2 words, and to pay respects to Sir Bidyadhar Misra. What I intend to talk today, I don't want to talk very long, but there is an important issue which is a macro issue. Do I have a control over that, or I'll have to depend upon you? Or else I will go there and then do.
No, sir, you can speak from the next slide. I would just ask you to come to this slide.
It's a remote control. Yeah, what I'm going to do is, now after a brief introduction, I'm going to ask, there's a lot of talk that goes on about the debt. Indian debt today, in fact, per capita, if you see, all of us have a debt burden of somewhere about 1,30,000 rupees. We don't know. Each of us owe something like 1,30,000 rupees because, debt to GDP ratio is close to 90%. So I talked about, after a brief introduction, I talked about why we should worry about debt. Please. No, this is where the problem is. Then I will talk about what happened during the pandemic and what are the economic consequences, and obviously we have been worried about debt for a long period of time. Deficits and debt have been a major concern for all of us for a long period of time. So we said that we should follow a rule-based policy. We should ensure that there should be certain amount of control. When the markets fail, you want the government to come and control it. When the markets fail, you want the government intervention. What do you do when the governments fail? We need to ask that question. What do we do when the governments fail in their task? Why I am asking these questions is that we have come to accept everything that is told to us. Question everybody. Don't leave. Questioning is important. We need the set of institutions, set of policy, and checks and balances to prevent the government failure. So that is rule-based fiscal policy is one of them. Basically asking the executive of the government to tell the parliament that this is what I have promised and this is what has actually happened. But invariably in most countries this rule-based fiscal policy has not worked. And the pandemic has actually worsened the situation. So that means that things are not done as well as they should. So we need the second generation reforms in terms of bringing about institutions. And the 15th Finance Commission has made a series of recommendations on how to really go about the budget management and budget reforms and to control debt through an institutional mechanism called the Fiscal Council. So I am going to be talking about these issues. Now, they may look very difficult, sort of distant, but they are very important for every one of us. Because because I am going to tell that what are the reasons why the excessive debt is very bad for us. Every housewife knows that she should not borrow more than what she can really afford. But the governments are not that clever as housewives. The problem is the governments think that they can go about doing things the way they want to. So, deficits and debt have been a problem in India for a very long time. Now we had the crisis in 1991. During the second half of 90s, that is 85 onwards, when Rajiv Gandhi came to power, he was in a hurry. He wanted to do a lot of infrastructure, a lot of things, and a huge amount of money was borrowed. Those days, when we said deficit financing, it's basically the government asking the Reserve Bank of India to give the money, which is creating money supply. So the things went on accumulating, and a problem burst out when Saddam Hussein decided to invade Kuwait, and the prices of oil doubled, and these people had a major balance of payment crisis. And gold had to be lifted physically. In fact, Rangarajan has written a recent book where he is talking about what he did as a deputy governor of the Reserve Bank. Physical gold had to be lifted to get money, and the money was not, the reserves were not sufficient to cover 3 weeks' imports. So we had that problem. Everything started with large deficits and accumulation of debt. And interestingly, you will see the Article 292 of the Constitution tells that the Parliament can impose limit on the government on the debt that it can borrow. There is a very clear indication in Article 292 that the Parliament can impose a limit. There was a state committee, there were several other committees which actually mentioned that, but they didn't do it. And the government was borrowing, and the deficit was mounting. So, 1991 crisis was a changing point, this thing, but still things didn't happen better. Immediately the things got better, but by the time we came to 2000, the problem returned. Again, you have a fiscal deficit of 10% of GDP in 2001. The government of India at that time decided to have a committee under the then Economic Affairs Secretary A.S. Sharma. We made certain preliminary recommendations, but actual recommendations came from the 12th Finance Commission, which was asked to look at the thing. And 12th Finance Commission made a recommendation that your deficit in a year, aggregate deficit of the central and state should not exceed 6% of GDP. In fact, Govinda was asking me, why 3% at the center? It must be a national treaty. In fact, interestingly, N.K. Singh once was talking about it, who became FRBM Review Committee Chairman in the 15th. In fact, at that time I told N.K. Singh that, Nandusar, this is not that simple. Please go and read the 12th Finance Commission report. You know, in an economy you have households, corporates, and the government. If you look at the savings investment balance, the corporates don't have a net saving. They have to make more investment. The government doesn't have a net saving because it borrows more money. It's only the households. And the households have financial savings and physical savings. If you save the money in a house or a gold, that is not available for borrowing. It's only the household sector financial saving that is important. And household sector's financial savings at that time was about 10% of GDP. The foreign money coming in, what is called the current account deficit, was about 1.5% of GDP. 1.5% of GDP was required for the public sector enterprises. And if you leave 4% of GDP for the private sector to borrow, ultimately money has to be there. If you leave 4% of GDP for the government sector to commercial sector to borrow, then you are left with 6% of GDP, and that 6% of GDP, 3% for the sector, 3% for the state. That's how the whole logic was created. There is a particular logic to that. A 3% Azad didn't come from nothing, it's not a manna from heaven. So the rule-based fiscal policy started being followed. But 2008-9, they went to reach that particular thing, but then, there was political issue. I will not go into the details. The expansion of National Rural Employment Guarantee from 200 districts to the whole country. Pay Commission recommendation, farm loan waiver. These are the three things which were not actually put in the budget. So the 3% of my good friend Monte Calvary has said, Govinda, you are a fiscal fundamentalist. So I told him that, look, I take it as a compliment. But then I am not saying whether the deficit more or less, I am saying that the numbers are not correct. We are still very good friends. So he said, now then, Dr. Manmohan Singh asked me, what exactly do you think? Then I said that the number will be at least double that. Because these three policy decisions we have taken, we have not factored that in the budget numbers. And if you do that, it becomes double. As it turned out, the oil prices touched $165 a barrel in sometime in July, and actually the comprehensive listing for that year, fiscal deficit became 7.5% as compared to 2.5% that was actually budgeted. But anyway, that apart, these are some of the stories that happened. So obviously there is a problem we have had. We have been struggling. Every commission has been giving a target and then we have not been adhering to the target. We have been taking pauses, we have been suspending things, we have been doing creative accounting, we have been changing the definitions. All sorts of things have been done. And this is not unique. Many other countries have also been doing this. And then of course we had the lockdown pandemic. And earlier, the total debt to GDP ratio was supposed to be about 60, the target was 60% of GDP. Now with the pandemic, everything went loose, and it became 90% of GDP. Now the question is, we need to get back. 90% of GDP debt is unsustainable. Now, in 25% of the revenues you generate goes in paying interest. That means that money is available. The revenues only 75% is available for your spending for productive purposes. So I am going to be talking about some things on the debt sustainability. There is some equation which I will avoid talking. I will only talk in terms of this thing. So I will also ask why we should worry about this deficit and debt. What are the various major consequences for that? And then what should we do to set the things right? Next. as I said, is it the third this thing or before that the equation? You keep it there. I'm not going to use the equation. But basically it says income in a country, when you calculate GDP, economic students will know, is equal to consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus exports minus imports. The usual identity that we talk about in the macro economics. We also know that income is equal to consumption plus savings plus taxes. Taxes and non-tax revenue. You see, put the second thing in the first one as substituting, and you will get a simplified equation. That means imports minus export, that means balance of payments. The minus is balance of payments is equal to investment saving imbalance plus fiscal. Government expenditure minus taxes is basically a fiscal deficit. Now that means that if the fiscal deficit goes up, either there should be a macroeconomic imbalance or there should be a balance of payment problem. These are all interdependent things. So obviously we can't afford to have more and more fiscal deficit for the same reason, because the Indian economy gets affected. I did talk about the 1991 crisis. Then there is something called so how do you really bring down the deficit? There is something called a Domer rule. You have heard of a Domer model. But Domer rule basically tells you that the debt will come down if you do not have a primary deficit. The primary deficit is deficit that you incur during the course of the year, not taking into account the past interest payments. That means, fiscal deficit minus the interest payment, that is deficit during the year. And if that is zero, then so long as the growth rate of the economy is, nominal growth rate of the economy is higher than the growth rate of, than the effective rate of interest that you pay, it will come down, because the debt to GDP ratio will come down. So basically, either you have to increase your growth rate of the economy, or you should reduce your primary deficit, or you should have a lower interest rate. Now the question is, in India, interest rate itself is suppressed. There is what you call the financial suppression. Governments borrow money at a rate much lower than the private sector borrow. This is because there is what is called the statutory liquidity ratio. The bonds have to be subscribed some 28% of the demanded time and liabilities of the banks like to go for that, etc. Now that would have a different set of problems. But basically the overall debt to GDP ratio will come down if the Domer equation, that means if the growth rate of the economy is faster than the effective rate of interest that takes place. Now debt sustainability or reduction in the stability, sustainability would require us to bring down the primary deficit, and that's extremely important. Now there are 4 reasons why the debt is that. One is, I mentioned to you, 25% of the revenue goes simply by paying interest payments. I am talking about central to states taken together. Number 2 is the one which I mentioned earlier, namely the financial sector savings is given. If the government takes more by way of borrowing more, less is left for the financial sector. If less is left for the commercial sector, interest rate there will go up. If the interest rate goes up there, the economy is called, financially crowds out the private sector. That is real investment that has to take place, may not take place. And if your debt to GDP is, in other words, if the debt that the government borrows is not productively used, then obviously there is a problem. The third is debt today is taxes to tomorrow. Somebody has to pay it back. On this, there is a very interesting discussion that has taken place in economics. Not many people are aware of it. That means poor children today, they have not a franchise, they have voted. You are borrowing and they have to pay back. There is something like intergenerational equity. So the burden of your borrowing today will go back to this thing. So if you do not really use the money that you borrow in a proper manner. There is a lot of interesting discussion that took place. Classical economists were very prudent. They said borrowing is bad. Borrowing particularly for consumption is bad. It has to be only for investment. There is something called a golden rule. That means current expenditure should not be, your borrowing should not be used for current expenditure. They said, so this is bad. But then came the Great Depression and then came Lord Keynes. For Lord Keynes, borrowing doesn't matter because ultimately effective demand that mattered, the employment that mattered, so obviously he went up. And the Keynesian view was beautifully described by Abba Lerner. So Abba Lerner went on to say that opinion in the classical expression is a vulgar opinion. And then, obviously, everybody said, where is the burden of the future generation? When the government floats bond, that is subscribed by people. It's an investment option. And when it is subscribed by people, they voluntarily do it. And when that matures, there is no problem again. The taxpayers will pay and then the bondholders will receive. There is only an exchange between the taxpayer and the bondholder. Where is the burden? Now, very convincing arguments. In fact, there is a beautiful book by James Buchanan called Public Principles of Public Debt. In fact, this is a available book, you can Google and get it. He gives very neatly these arguments. Then comes Buchanan. And there is some story about it, I will not go into. And Buchanan comes up and says, suddenly it occurred to him that if everybody was following Keynes, say that this is a new orthodoxy. You have vulgar opinion, then you have new orthodoxy. And new orthodoxy basically says, and he said, there is in economics something called an opportunity cost. That if that money that has been borrowed has been used in a better manner, it would have generated sufficient rates of income, return, which would have been able to, which would have serviced the debt and the repayment. So there is something called an opportunity cost. And there were three propositions. He said, private debt and public debt are not very different. The Keynesian said there is difference between private debt and the public debt. They are the same, both have to be paid for, and somebody has to pay. The second thing is that does involve if the money is not used properly, then the taxpayer in the next generation will have to pay. There is a intergenerational equity issue. Burden of debt will follow the future generation. And the third one is that there is no difference between internal and external debt. Of course, sort of when I wrote this up in my book, Reddy got back and said that I said all these differences come that in dual because external stability and debt, etc. Because they are not a fully convertible currency. If you have a fully convertible currency, your currency, exchange rate will take care of many of the other things. But then you can't afford to become fully convertible. So we have a peculiar problem in the context as far as the financial stability is concerned. But in principle, outside data has to be also paid for, internal data also has to be paid for. So what he said, after all, When you see the vulgar opinion and then new orthodoxy, and he said that it is ultimately the vulgar opinion that is the correct opinion. But anyway, I mean, these are some of the things that economics see what happens when students come and what happened in the literature. So next. So when the pandemic came, we had a huge problem. There was lockdown, and obviously the revenues fell down. And health and both lives and livelihood had to be protected, and huge amount of additional expenses had to be done. Food security had to be extended to the whole country, and a lot of much of the heavy lifting was done by the monetary policy, not the fiscal policy. But the fiscal policy also had about 1.5% additional expenditure to be made. So now we got into a 90% lifting. Every country had this particular problem. We got into 90% of GDP, and partial recovery has happened in 2021-22. Now, I mean, if you look at 21-22, it's about the debt to GDP ratio is about 86%, and as I said, 85.6%. Next. I mean, this is a number I don't want to get into. Every 10 years you have a problem, both the revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, and the debt stock. The revenue deficit is something which no household would like to have. That means you get the revenues and your housekeeping expenditures. The difference between that is the revenue deficit. That means current revenues minus current expenditure is the revenue deficit. Fiscal deficit is the total revenues, including the disinvestment receipts. That means tax, non-tax revenues plus disinvestment receipts minus the total expenditures is the fiscal deficit. That is the amount of money that you are required to borrow every year, generally. And then our debt is the accumulation of fiscal deficit over a period of time. Next. Now, limited fiscal consolidation and therefore fiscal policy. As I mentioned, the 12th Finance Commission gave the first one, and everything got rattled in 2008-9. Then came the 13th Finance Commission, which basically said that the center will generate a revenue surplus of 0.5% of GSDP, and there will be disinvestment proceeds of 1.5% of GDP and 3% of the revenue. So 3% of GDP they will borrow. That means 4.5% of GDP will be capital expenditure. So that's how it should be, and that didn't happen at the central level. At the state level, again, Article 293 of the Constitution tells you that the states can borrow, but if they are indebted to the center, then they have to seek the permission of the center to borrow, which basically means the center will decide to. States also do a lot of creative accounting, and possibly Orissa is one of those states which has been very prudent. But generally speaking, you go to a sort of state like Punjab or Kerala for that matter, reckless borrowing that they do, they borrow through, this is not opposite borrowing they do. They borrow through various public enterprises. Kerala has come out with created a company and floated a masala bond, and of course now it has gone to the enforcement directorate. And and then floated it in London Stock Exchange. And Punjab, if you really see the power sector deficit there, about 2 years ago I saw that because there was a committee under Monte Carlo earlier, Monte requested B2B to looking at the finances. 13,500 crores of subsidy on this thing, which is equivalent to 2.5% of their GSDP, is subsidy on the power sector. And the situation is not very different in Tamil Nadu. And then they don't want the subsidy. And then you will have the Alumni party coming and saying that no, we will not. And then it becomes a prestige. There is a newspaper advertisement basically saying that we don't, we have zero bill and zero bill electricity bill for so 80% of the. I mean, is it our success? Is it a story of the success that we don't charge electricity? Somebody else has to pay. This doesn't come as free. But anyway, I mean, again, I don't want to get into the politics of it. Every political party, interestingly, you will be very surprised to know. Long time ago, sometimes in the mid-70s, maybe early 80s, there was a committee under Bidyadhar, basically on the whole issue of this charging electricity. At that time, he said, we should meterize electricity for the agricultural consumers and charge 50 paise per unit. There is an NDC committee. It's called austerity committee. And not very many people. Now I do happen to have a copy of that report still with me. Even those people used to think in terms of that. But we don't. We think that everything is free as if things are sent from heaven. So you have 14th Finance Commission, 13th Finance Commission thinks the targets remain where they are. In the 14th Finance Commission, we said that as far as this, again we set the targets. I happen to be a member of that commission. And but then we said for the states, if the debt to GSDP ratio is less than 25%, if the interest payment to revenue ratio is less than 10%, they can be allowed to borrow 25 basis points more. So 3% is the limit, but then the states which can afford, which have a better fiscal situation, can borrow more. We also talked about extended debt and deficit by saying that is the power sector should be included that, but in any case. So, but the point is that nothing would, they did, some of the states took advantage of that, not all of them. And very interestingly, Orissa always was much below what it was permitted to borrow. I have a very peculiar problem in my mind that's going on. And that is, it's generally about the poorer states. You have one size fits all target, that 3% of GSDP can borrow. Now, 3% of the GSDP for a very rich state which has a large absolute value of GSDP, and 3% of GSDP also for Bihar, which is the lowest per capita income state. The amount of money required for infrastructure development in Bihar is enormous. But then they are not going to borrow. In other words, there is a sort of the entire scheme is biased sort of against the poorer states in that sense. But anyway, that's a different point altogether. But the fact of the matter is, none of the Finance Commission's recommendations as far as fiscal responsibility and budget management was done. There was escape costs used. The things were suspended for some time. Creative accounting was used. One public sector company was sold to another public sector company and the money was taken. The Rural Electrification Corporation was sold to Power Finance Corporation and money was taken for existing fiscal. And this has, all this creative accounting has happened. Credibility of the budget is an escape. Every Finance Commission comes up and says that move to an accrual accounting system. And government just doesn't do it. Which basically means contractor bills don't pay them in time. You collect taxes in advance so that in March you show that fiscal ability is real. So, there has been I will not say that it has been a complete failure, I mean, at least those people who wanted to do it could do it, to some extent. I mean, they could say that, oh, there is an FRBM Act and I have to continue. So, limited fiscal consolidation. Next. And this is the indicator target given by the 15th Finance Commission. It basically says that, now it says that the revenue deficit by 2025 should be reduced by the center to 0.4%. And fiscal deficit altogether should be reduced by the center to 4.6%. Every year, half a percentage point improvement. But then it also says that this is, and we are still in uncertain times because of the pandemic. Therefore, you say that the next year, then you should immediately, the government should appoint a committee to go and rework the entire fiscal risk scheme. Next. And then, of course, new framework. The point is that, as I said, this is not only the experience in India. Most of the countries following rule-based policy are faced. There's a paper by the IMF which basically talks about these experiences as well. So there is a need for credibility, comprehensiveness, and transparency in the entire rules that you frame. And there should be a medium-term fiscal framework alongside the setting targets. The target is not sacrosanct, but the system that you really want to put there should be, robust. The other important recommendation that is being made is that you need, as I mentioned, there's an answer to the question earlier, when the government says what do you do? To prevent the government failure, you need an independent fiscal institution which will monitor appointed by the parliament and reporting to the parliament, which will monitor, how the things are. Not like controls and auditor general who does the postmortem. This concurrently is, in fact, the three major responsibilities that the Fiscal Council has in most of the countries is, in fact, incidentally, there are 50 fiscal councils in the world in 49 countries. In some of the countries, the budget projections are made by the Fiscal Council and given to the thing. Where the problem starts by excessive, unrealistic projection. When the revenues are projected very, exaggerated, and the expenditures are cut down, there are two problems that happen. Optimistic revenue projections result in what is called the tax parity. How does it happen? These projections are done and they are divided into month-wise details and given to the commissioners. Commissioners go about simply right or wrong raising the revenue. Because they are interested in fulfilling the targets and then getting into their and getting promotion. The point is, they know that they are doing wrong things. 72% of this is the report of the Control and Auditor General. 72% of the tribunal cases are in favor of the SSCs. 76% of the cases in the High Courts are in favor of the SSCs. 70% of the cases in the Supreme Court are in favor of SSCs. Which basically means, because there is a rule that is when you go to a tribunal, you need to pay 25% of the tax. So he gets 25%, he knows that he's going to lose it, but still he gets 20% of the tax, and then he can put this account. So there is, excessive, like over optimistic projections are bad in the system. That also, also impacts on the expenditure side, all the planning of the expenditure that you have done will go completely off. Now, as I said, there are about, in the United States you have what is called Congressional Budget Office. In UK you have Office of Budget and Accounting. In Australia you have parliamentary budget officers. And you have, in many other countries, you have fiscal councils. These are independent councils. 13th Finance Commission, while doing this, it should be transparent, comprehensive, etc., said that Government of India, Ministry of Finance will appoint a committee to monitor things which will convert itself into a fiscal council. I mean, at that time, I so told, I wrote an article telling people, how can a player be an umpire? I mean, you need an umpire who should not be a player. Now, here is a case where the Government of India and Ministry of Finance will appoint a committee which will become an independent fiscal council. So, the FRBM review committee under education did the same thing. So, in the 14th Finance Commission, in fact, I am personally responsible for this recommendation, of course, which has never been accepted, that's a different thing. And, I wrote a very detailed note on how things have to be done. And we said that the FRBM Act should be amended, and the Parliament should be asked to appoint fiscal council, which should be reporting to the Parliament and obviously publishing this particular thing to the public at large, so that raise awareness of the problem. So nothing was done. The 15th Finance Commission, in fact, NKC wanted me to be an advisor to the Commission in that advisory committee, and when he said that, in the FRBM committee we have said that Ministry of Finance. I said that's a non-recommendation. I mean, you can't have a player, being an umpire. Then he said, and then I explained to him that this is the thing, that you need to have a parliament do it. And Mr. Alumni, who was another member, I had worked earlier in the annual, he said what Govinda says is right and we should do that. But anyway, 15th Finance Commission has also made a recommendation for an fiscal council, and I believe Ministry of Finance has no interest in doing it. And then of course, 15th Finance Commission has gone about making a lot more of recommendations on having budget reforms, including bringing about accrual accounting system, from the. And then of course, it has given the indicative target and said that new targets should be worked on. Next. So, problem of fiscal sustainability and stability is a very worrisome thing. We need to worry about our children. If we are like our children, if we love our children, we should not burden them with the sins that we commit. The pandemic has only added to the problem. The pandemic is over now, the economy is reviving, and the economy revives, and the economy pulls up. I think it is time that we should do. But one of the important things that we need to know is that the 60% target, which was said 40% for the center, 20% for the state, earlier, the set target will never be reached, because I think we have gone far beyond. But the question is, what is the right target we need to really work it out? And it can't be, instead of 60, we will go up to 70, but then beyond that, we should not. In fact, NCAR Director General, when I made some presentation somewhere, she said, that we should work together on this, we should write a paper for the India policy. I said, okay, we'll see what we can do, but the point is that it will improve because the denominator, GDP, as it grows, numerator, doesn't go as fast as the denominator. So, from it, the target for the 15th Finance Commission is unrealistic. Only, 86% we have already reached, and that's not the way. But in the 5 years' time, we should be able to reach somewhere about 75% of GDP. And need to work, but at least budget reforms, like making it comprehensive. You had a very funny situation. West Bengal had a very bad fiscal situation. Their power sector was very good. Tamil Nadu had a very good fiscal situation. Well, power sector is, a basket case. Now you need to have some sort of, actually the fiscal deficit. I mean, you add the losses of electricity distribution sector utilities is much larger than what is permitted. So obviously there has to be comprehensiveness, and this borrowing from public enterprises will have to stop, and there has to be much greater discipline, and we should have a longer perspective rather than very narrow perspective. We need to amend the Fiscal Responsibility Act, make it, as I said, important at this point. It is not just whether you reach the target in 1 year or other. You need to really have the thing in mind, and resorting to escape clauses and this and that. I mean that even for flimsy ground is not a way to go. Fiscal Council is an important institution. I am making, I have been talking about it. In fact, Vidyadhar writes from New York University saying that Govinda, we are the only people who are talking about it. We talk about it, but then at least more people will talk as we go along. And I hope at some point of time, the government will realize that it is for its own good. I will not say that Fiscal Council is a silver bullet. If there is no intention, if there is no political willingness, even if you have a Fiscal Council, they will try to escape. If you have a fiscal political willingness, then even if you don't have a Fiscal Council, you will follow the Fiscal Council. But then, like in the case of Fiscal Small FRBM Act, it's helpful. They can use this and then actually try to control the deficit. At least leave our children in peace and not the worry that they are required to repay the debt committed by their parents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was indeed insightful, interesting, flagging of important issues, trying to provoke the minds of people here, the young minds. So, with your permission, sir, can we take a few questions?
Yeah, please.
So, if there is any question, any query, any observation, any clarification, please feel free to ask. We'll start with the student and go to you. Yes, sir.
Expenditure and tax both are two instruments of a budget. I am an ordinary man, not knowledgeable so. But government is failing to ensure sustainability probably. Fiscal, what's that policy? Fiscal, last stage of the body institution autonomous. Fiscal council is probably to ensure sustainability. Now, how what is sustainable and how the policy, fiscal policy empowered by the government can possibly sustainability ensure?
Yeah, now, I am also a layperson. Let me also tell you that. Possibly laypersons have more interesting questions to ask than an economist. There's a psychologist, an economist met another economist after a long time. And he said, how are you? And the other fellow asked, come back what? That's the debate. Whereas the psychologist went to another psychologist and he said, you look good, you tell me how am I? So, but anyway, coming back to this, as I said, you can go on propagating and borrowing. Your expenditures, everybody wants more and more expenditure. Nobody wants to pay taxes. I mean, that's a human nature. So you go on borrowing and you think that somebody else should take the burden. So obviously when you borrow more and more, that accumulates into debt. And that has to be repaid. And you have a problem because much of whatever you earn by your tax goes into debt repayment, debt, etc. Now that is the reason why. So you need to have, and if the debt becomes so much, it becomes unsustainable. You can't really sustain it any longer. So you need to put a brake and you need to control it. So you need to make it stable and you need to make it decline. And that is the reason why we say that, sort of, you need to really have, if the economy is growing very fast, it is okay. But but your interest rate is much higher. And if your deficit is much higher, it will go on equally.
How can it be done unless it is distributed over the generation?
Yeah, obviously. So you need to really, ultimately this has to be paid by the future generation.
Exactly.
Okay. So obviously you need to really maintain certain level of stability. I told you why debt is bad. I explained. Now, how do you really make these governments realize this? So therefore we brought in what is called the good-based policy. So you can put a target, you should talk about that. But that hasn't worked very well. Now, what is the next stage of really controlling the government from doing wrong things? That you create an independent committee, which will basically, it will do three. One is, it will make the projections and then tell the government, don't make wrong projections, you make the proper projections and then proceed. Number one. And if the projections are wrong, it will say that your projections are not wrong, because it is an expert government. Second thing, it will monitor. When the progressive, as the budget progresses, monitor, and it says that look, you are making a wrong thing, you better correct yourself. Either you raise more revenue or more, cut your expenditure, and then basically look at the quality of expenditures as well. And the third thing that they do is, say on the ramparts of the Red Fort, every 15th of August, Prime Minister goes and makes all sorts of announcements. It doesn't have to be there itself. Everywhere, they make announcements. And nobody has worked out the expenditure on these. These are the various expenditures that they make. So they think, Namani Gange, how much of money have we really poured into Ganges? Have we improved the quality of water? No. Like this, there are also, and then, one rank and one pension. Good intention. But then when you actually do that, you realize that there is this old age, old pension scheme. They don't really work out what the total expenditure of the things. They come in council will say that look, this is the total expenditure that is going to happen because of this announcement. Are you serious? And let the people know, because at the end of the day, people have to know that somebody has to pay for this. It doesn't come free. So basically, it will raise quality of discussion in the parliament. And since it is public, it will raise quality of discussion in discourse in the public as well. And when somebody puts out saying that 86% of the electricity bills are zero, it will say that this is a bad thing, it is not a right thing to do. Ultimately, somebody has to pay for this. You can't.
Do you advise a fiscal council to?
It will prepare reports, publish the reports, give the report to the parliament for discussion. It will not give to the
Before that, you must get the parliament sanction, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is anyone else?
No, I am not saying that as it will be a good thing, but it's another check and balance.
Second. Thank you.
Any other students?
So I just say that now for states we have already taken out the power of taxation through GST Council because they can decide anything independently on taxation, and they are also advocating that we should also take out the rights to spend because this is Fiscal Council. So are you not saying that states do not have any independence and everything will be decided by the center or together we can say? So states will oppose, and in the Finance Commission there are a lot of discussion that states should have their autonomy, and they are saying that now there will be no autonomy on taxation and expenditure. So yeah, you respect.
Now let me come to this question. You said you have taken away the powers of taxation. States have agreed. I didn't say that the state should agree. Now there is an interesting Supreme Court judgment. And the Supreme Court judgment says that the state governments are supreme, they are sovereign. The right to levy taxes is theirs. Now they can come out and say that we don't want want to be a part of this. Now, they agreed to tax harmonization, harmonizing the taxes. Think on the basis that they will continue to get more revenue. And GST has turned out to be a money machine in most of the countries in the world. Now in India, for the first 2 years, the technology platform did not stabilize. And if the technology platform does not stabilize, the probability of detection is zero. And obviously, the fake bills industry came out, and people are using fake bills to take, tax deduction and evading taxes. Now, for the last 9 months, you have tax revenue, GST exceeding 1.4 lakh crore. I think this is the time they have to reduce, to do the reform, reduce the number of rates into 2, get rid of most of the tax exemptions that they have, and bring in petroleum products back into the tax net so that the cascading element, which was important, would really be taken care of. And anyway, I have spoken on this a week ago in the inaugural address in I don't want to. So as far as the revenue is concerned, of course it was wrong on the part of the government of India to say that there is an act of God and therefore I will not pay you the compensation. I mean, it's against the federal spirit of the constitution, the federal spirit. I mean, that apart. But I think this is an agreement that they have gone through. It's quite possible that the government of India bribed them for this agreement. By saying that I will give you compensation calculated 14% growth every year, and that's a different issue. But then they are a party to this, and they have a chance. If they wanted, they have a choice of getting out. It's not that they will not, because it would happen. I mean, they will be the losers in the process. That's one. And fiscal council doesn't restrict you from expenditure. And again, as far as the states are concerned, the total volume of borrowing that the state can do is controlled by the sector. Much of the problem with the fiscal situation today in our country is by the sector. As far as the states are concerned, except for West Bengal, Kerala, Punjab, and to an extent Tamil Nadu, things are okay. Now, there are other things. Years ago, sort of when Kelkar worked on the taxes task force, he said many of these corporates have gotten into agriculture. ITC has a huge amount of income coming from agriculture. And there are quite a few companies getting in. And if you have something like 5 lakhs of rupees exemption and various other incentives that you have, small farmers are not going to be affected. It's only the big fellows with a lot, with the, what you have, farmhouses. Everybody has a farmhouse because they can evade the taxes. That has gone on. So there are the property tax. Why is it that the local bodies are not allowed to raise sufficient revenue from property tax? You have the revenue sources. And of course, we come up with prohibition from time to time. And then, Karnataka this year, they are touching 30,000 crores of excise. The Karnataka fellows drink a lot. Let me tell you that. Yeah, you are almost able to ask a question. Go ahead.
You told that
So you told that deficit is good, debt, public debt is good.
Public debt is good.
Good for economy.
Oh, that's a bad thing to do.
It is
Exactly the opposite. I was getting various points of view.
Yeah.
And the Keynesians believe that. But here not Keynesian anymore. Public debt you can incur at the time when the economy is slowing down. Then there is something called counter-cyclical policy. This basically says that the economy is in a downward phase of the cycle. The government can borrow and spend. But at the same time, when the economy comes up, the government should be strict and it should not borrow, it should borrow much less.
But
And the borrowing will have to be only for capital expenditure.
sir, why then government budget in budget deficit is making zero? Why is the reason that budgeted deficit is zero? Even though there is some government is have to pay liabilities are there, budget deficit is become zero. What is the reason?
I mean, they have to indicate this is the
When fiscal deficit is there,
Yeah.
when budget deficit is zero.
No. See, before 1990, we had something called budget deficit. The budget deficit those days was very different. They have borrowed from the market is separate. And then budget on top, if there is a deficit, they will automatically ask the Reserve Bank of India to do it.
Right.
It's a very
Yes.
that is the huge problem because money supply increased. That is not bigger. And the real deficit was not clear. And at that time, in 1900, when the prices go, the concept of budget deficit has been removed. There is no budget deficit. You have revenue deficit, you have fiscal deficit, you have credit deficit. And obviously there is the states have to report all these deficits so that if you talk more deficit, they can answer.
Okay, sir. Anyone wants to ask a question? You want to ask a question? Yes, sir. Aguas, come to the
Sir, my question is what are the ways to minimize risk on future generation if government made the policies that may be unsustainable?
No, I mean obviously the burden will be on the future generation. Because that's why that one book, Public Principle of Public Debt is a very nice book. He defines generations. So this year one generation, next year different generation. That means this year you borrow, tomorrow you have to pay. And obviously, if you have unsustainable levels of debt, that has to be paid. You have to repay. You have to pay the interest payment on that. So obviously, that will impact on the future generation, the next generation. Tomorrow you borrow today, you give the bonds, tomorrow that bank will mature, it has to be repaid. Interest payments have to be paid. And that's why we will not be paying it, our children will be paying it. Because we have created this burden of that.
Thank you so much. It was really a very insightful session. My question is, sir, you have told about Delhi electricity bill. So in different states, there are so many social security schemes. Like in Odisha, there is Karya, and other social security schemes, and such like that. And also, some farmers are making loans, and their loan waiving schemes are also their loans are getting waived. So, what is the solution to it? Because social security schemes have a lot of expenditure is borne by the government. So how it is going to impact on this fiscal sustainability? And
let me put it this way. In fact, I need not go into the whole question of, this is actually discussed in the first chapter of my book called, this is called Studies in Indian Public Finance. This is the book. It came out only 3 months ago. But anyway, let me give you a very short answer. The governments have to see what is the role of the government. What is it supposed to do? Governments have to come in where the markets stay. When the markets are unable to do things, the governments have to come in and do it. In the past, without that, the government is by law. It's a social guardian. But then, if you really look at it, it's the bureaucrats and politicians who really maximize their own welfare rather than welfare of the people. Who cares if the big later? Anyway. But what is it that the markets cannot do? Markets cannot give public goods. Public would have peculiar characteristics, depends. You get as much depends as he gets. I get as much depends as you get. They are non-rival in consumption. When you go to municipal park, whether you go or 10 people go or 1,000 people, 100 people come, all of them get the whole of park. It is not that park is divided into 100. So, you are not rival in, they are non-rival in consumption and non-excludable. Now you may say that I don't want defense, but you can't be excluded, you are part of this country. So because of that, you will not tell your products. So you are not, because you know that even if I say that I am getting out, you will get it anyway. So you will not, you are not willing to pay. Therefore, the taxes have to come in and compulsory payments have to come in. So public goods have to be provided by the government, market will not provide because prices cannot be returned. There are some which have a social benefit much larger than the private thing. Education, healthcare, basic water supply sanitation, and there is other things. Now you can subsidize that to the private sector to do, or you can, the government can do. And there are other things where market can provide. But then there can be predatory competition, exploitation. That is where the regulation comes in. Ownership is not a substitute for regulation. Commercial banks, you say, if they are commercial, why is the government getting involved? People's money is involved in not only, the government-owned commercial bank is not going to give your money back more than what the private sector bank will give. But then, and just because the government wants, you can't say that you should not have regulation. You should regulate each one of those entities. Why should the government run so many public enterprises? Why should the government compete with the market? Government has a role to regulate the market. The other important area, all this story that I am telling you to ask the wrong person, because I have written on this and thought of it. Redistribution. Poverty elimination. Market will not do that. Market cannot do that. Now, how do you redistribute? And you think, you ask James Buchanan, he will say, give them cash transfers. Let them decide whether they want to use the cash transfers for alcohol or bills or something else. How does the government know about the needs of an individual better than the individual himself? These are the questions that are asked. So the thing that you are saying, the government is doing this and that, the government is thinking that it knows better than the individual. And therefore we will subsidize that, subsidize this, give that free, give this free. Basically it is a redistribution. It is because poor people cannot afford to buy them. So you want to give them free. So you give them free. Now the problem with subsidy is that it has other unintended consequences. We talked about electricity. The water table in Punjab has gone down to such a low level because you have free electricity and underground mining of water has gone so badly. Suppose you say that the Kisans have some problems and then so I will give redistribute cash to them. Let them decide how they want to do that. But then I will not allow them to do uncontrolled mining of water, underground mining of water. Then possibly they will change the economic practice. They will do something else. Now, so we have complete fertilizer subsidy, excessive use of urea, and soil salinity, and various other things. So the question is, what is the right way to deal with anti-poverty redistribution? That market will not do. So obviously, when Odisha decides to do certain things for the poor people, I think it's absolutely necessary. But what is the right way to go forward?
Thank you, sir. So, the questions show that the talk has really inspired the minds, ignited the minds. So, coming to the next part, I request the President of the Alumni Association, Professor Subhas Kumar, sir, to give his remarks on the talk. Professor Subhas Kumar.
Good evening and welcome to everybody. Esteemed speaker and resource person, Dr. Govinda, and Key Council Chairman, Vikas Patnaik, of course, in absentia. Respected HOD, Dr. Bidyadhar, and dear Secretary, Alumni Association, Professor Bidyadhar, fellow members, students, and invitees. In my thought and in my Professor Fiscal is here, there are so many persons, but I cannot take them their names. I welcome everybody to this intellectual discourse. First of all, on behalf of all members of the association, convey our sincere thanks to Dr. Rao, who favored us by accepting our invitation to deliver this Bidyadhar Misra Memorial Lecture on the topic Sustainable Fiscal Policy in India Post-Pandemic Challenges. It's true that we all experienced how fiscal policy and various government initiatives during pandemic have saved life and livelihood to a great extent. But as Dr. Rao said, at the same time, it is important that sector heavily. In recent time, he has also hinted at the worldwide inflation, global conflict and war, and financial tightening have accentuated the vulnerability in the management of public finance. As a result, there are debates and discussions at various forums and levels to ponder and prescribe, as we are doing today, a sustainable fiscal policy, as our students' question. As others, including me, believe that a sustainable fiscal policy heavily hinges on. Of course, Dr. Rao has covered most of the aspects, but each aspect needs a thorough debate and discussion before prescribing for a sustainable fiscal policy. And basically, the fiscal policy hinges heavily on interest rates management. Interest rate management, and secondly, economic growth. Third one, the most importantly, the political stability. That's most important. And another aspect which needs to be taken care of, financial balancing act to address the growing inequality at various spectrums. As this, you covered up this welfare schemes and everything that comes of poverty, inequality, regional inequality, and inequality of different sectors, and so on and so forth. That has to be again taken care of. And one more aspect that needs to be, is critical. That is, when you go on prescribing, as we were listening to Dr. Rao, he has mentioned that the ratio of debt to GDP is almost 90%. And again, he has also said we cannot go on taxing rich to redistribute among the poor. So that means we are in a situation of conundrum, how to get a solution to it. So therefore, what I suggest, I believe that any policy to be sustainable should bring time element into the government. That is short period, medium period, and long period. What we have to do to deal with the deficit that we have incurred historically as well as for recent past because of the pandemic. So, keeping in view the stages of recovery, why time is important? Because we found that in a year that gradually the Indian economy is recovering, but the recovery has not taken place in an equal space in all sectors and in all regions. As my dear student as well as my colleague Amarendra has rightly stated that of course Dr. Rao has replied that nobody has snatched away the right of the states or the states have agreed for GST, but at the same time when there is Dr. Rao is suggesting that there should be a council and this council will be approved, the suggestion is mandatory, it will be mandatory, so to say, as he says, it will create a check and balance, but at the same time, when you consider the political discourse and bring it to that, and I'm sure that like there are many councils, they have failed in the past, and this may not succeed. However, that Rao has extensively addressed all the issues and indicators that are matters of concern, and the government must consider while framing and implementing the fiscal policy which can be sustainable in the future. But there are many issues which I have already said, that management of interest, economic growth, then political stability. I'm not bringing that in place. That's in a monetary policy and so and so. But there are also some external factors. Even if, as you have experienced, you are having some kind of policy that which you think that this is best suited in the Indian context, but it may not because of the external forces like you see this the international conflicts and war and global crisis of this oil prices and so on and so forth. So therefore, this topic is, of course, it is very important for discussion, but it is very difficult to arrive at conclusive policy measures, which are to be very much pragmatic and also implemented. But one thing, sir, I wanted to know from you, it may be taken as a question or for clarification of my students, that now you say the vulgar has already come. That means vulgar is right, the classical economists are right. Because we know the students of economics, if I emphasize the growth, the classicals, they were saying that reduce your consumption and increase your saving so that you generate saving for investment, and that investment means income will grow, everything will grow. So that was the classical version of this growth theory. But when the Keynes came, because of the emergency in 1930s crisis, he said, let us go on spending, because the demand should be generated, so that expenditure should be more, so through borrowing or deficit financing, and then will be economic growth. So both will true. But do you say, sir, in this situation, the Keynesian theory has taken a backstep, or still it has a relevance in formulation of public policy like fiscal policy and sustainability for sustainability? Sorry, sir. This question I wanted to clarify for myself and for my students also, because you refer to. So another thing, that is, you have rightly stated, and many things have stated, that need-based policy to counter, but he has explained how that need-based rule has almost failed. It's not working properly, and that he is to highlight a little bit of more why it failed. And again, that political discourse comes to the picture. We economists, we cannot simply think of economics in isolation of political discourse, and that's true because let me tell you something more, a little bit in 1 or 2 minutes I will take. You know that in the political discourse you will find there are left liberals and there are right-wings and democratic other people, and their thinking of economics is totally different. My students, they know that Karl Marx is separate. Their thinking is different, but that is still irrelevant. That is still working, even if globalization we are experiencing. I think through this different generations of reforms from since 1991 in India and world over also. But we cannot simply wipe out their thinking process and the economic policy, because there comes, as my student has asked, that whether the welfare schemes should be taken up and the government should incorporate in fiscal policy how more funds should be diverted towards welfare policy. But at the pinch of salt, I want to say, sir has also pointed out they are the best job where they will do the yesterday. My friend was telling the government of Odisha has started giving money, cash delivery. Professor was talking about cash delivery, cash transfer for winter garments. And their village, and per day, that money is used for liquor and selling is more than 30,000 rupees. And government doesn't know that whether the money is rightly is spent or whether the people are really benefited, or similarly the Kariya Yojana as he has stated, the people have started not going to the land and not cultivating in Odisha is gradually going to be forget about financial discipline, how you adjust, what is the limit, how much you want and spend, but at the same time the economic growth has to be again emphasized, because our future generation, as you said, that posterity, they will pay if you go on borrowing without looking to the basic growth of the economy. So that should be also taken care. But anyway, I again, on behalf of everybody, sir, grateful to you that this is the topic, it's a burning topic, contemporary topic. Everywhere it is being discussed, and it needs to be discussed very thoroughly before coming out with some specific suggestions. I am sure that your deliberation today here and some of the suggestions are very vital, and the government of India and the state government, they will look into do. Thank you so much once again. Thank you very much. Yeah? That's it.
Sorry, I thought my job was over. Yeah, let me tell you that, when the classical said, talked about the austerity, and they said that there is no unemployment. Economy is always in full employment. They missed two things. One is, there is something called a downward rigidity of wages, and the other one is downward rigidity of interest rates. If there is an unemployment, if the wages decline, employers will find it easier to appoint more people, and then obviously equilibrium will be. Similarly, interest rates, when there is no investment, interest rate will fall, and then obviously the economy will pick up. But this is the typical classic Say's law. Okay. Now, you people have been teaching, and I don't talk about it. And you can say that that's an exceptional case, where there is a downward rigidity of wages and downward rigidity of interest rates, and marginal efficiency of capital will have to be higher than the rate of interest if the investment capital takes. And obviously, there will be general cases that one of unemployment rather than full employment. Then he said that they dig the holes and build them up, and then you can have full employment. That was the problem for the time that was there. That is one of the, and then of course, when this particular thing happens, when the government spends more and more, economy gets heated up. So there is a choice between the inflation and income, employment and employment institutions on the common come up. The little people came up with that. All these are relevant. It is not like one is like that is one of the reasons why we talk about counter-cyclical policy. When we say counter-cyclical policy, what we are saying is that when the economy is in a higher part of the cycle, then the government should withdraw. And when the economy is in the dumps, the government will have to come because the private sector will not be making investment. You know, in 2001, 2020, 2021, the private sector's household savings, financial sector savings was almost 12% of GDP. Because money was there and nobody was willing to invest. And obviously, the government spending more money did not raise the interest rates and did not cover out the private investment. So one has to, the policymaker's job is to see, look at the pulse of the economy and see where, at what time. But at the same time, you can't simply go on spending money. You need to have a medium-term perspective. That is not that the rule-based policy should not be just a target every year after year. There is a medium-term fiscal plan. You need to have a medium-term target and then see at what time, at what phase of the cycle the economy is in, and then make the appropriate decision about spending and all that. So that's a different thing. I was talking not the day-to-day issue. I was talking about the medium term, how the government will have to do. Now we have 90% and then how we need to really bring it down. That's one of the, on the political feasibility. Now, you know, there are ways. If you say that, you see, the cash transfer will be made to the housewife. I mean, let us ask this question.
Yes.
No, we have started, in fact, Nitish Kumar started a very interesting case, that is providing bicycles for the girls' school. Which is that, I mean, I have nothing against it. There's an appropriate way of going about it. How do we, you know, it increases the education level of the girls. You know, school students, giving them free. I mean, obviously, money will not be given to them, you know, for anything.
One second. The Government of India and the Government of Odisha, they give post-matric scholarship to SC students. And huge amount of money is given, and there was a halla. Is it a good education policy? Sir, for your kind information, sir, somehow after my retirement, I am associated with 780 institutions. In Odisha, most of these institutions now taking SC students, out of which, you know, around 60% students are being placed and educated and being placed. Even if there are 40% students chewing away their money, taking admission, and money directly transferred into their account, and they are doing it. So what I am saying, sir, my submission is that when you take the question of social inequality and the fiscal discipline, political discourse, then such a problem arises to arrive at a specific, certain, you know, sustainable policy like that. This is my answer.
Look, how every micro level, this policy has to be calibrated, is left to the politician. And even if I say something which is better, they will not accept it, and then I know it very well. Okay, and that's not the point. The point is, this has to be calibrated. But I have a certain anxiety in this country. You know, we talked about 75. We still want expansion of reservation in this and that. That is an indication of our failure of policy. If we had generated sufficient employment opportunity for all, and if we provided them sufficient skills, I'm not irrespective of this thing, whichever is the class. The expansion in this particular thing is a failure of our policy in the past. That is, we have not created opportunities. Let us understand that.
Yes.
And then obviously we will go on increasing this particular thing to cover our period. I think, that apart, what specific action has to be taken. See, what the politicians will do is basically what fetches them with the votes. They are not interested in whether, it improves the society or not. But what happens in the next election, how they can go about, basically that. Now, I may say anything, but then as an economist, I like to say there are consequences of this. That's all that I am saying.
Thank you.
Rest of the questions we can discuss one to one. You can always have a discussion with Professor. He is there with us for some more time. So that's a brilliant discussion. Before we conclude and offer the formal vote of thanks, I would like to request the student volunteers to come forward and request our president to honor the chief guest and the chief speaker keynote address delivered was delivered to honor him with a bouquet of flowers and a shawl.
फोटो उठाते हैं।
That's a precious moment indeed captured in pictures. So I request the head of the department and the working president of the Alumni Association, Dr. Himanshu Sekharao, to offer a formal vote of thanks.
A very good evening to everybody. Respected Professor M. Govinda, the speaker of the day, esteemed Professor Durgashankar Patnaik, our beloved chairman, DG Council in absentia, respected Professor Subhashri Kumar, president of the association, esteemed Professor Mithali Chenara, secretary of Alumni Association of Economics, esteemed members of the Executive Council, esteemed members of the association, invited guests, respected faculty members of Fiscal University, dear student friends, members of from print and electronic media. I am here to present a formal vote of thanks to all present here. On behalf of Alumni Association of Analytical and Applied Economics, Fiscal University, and on my personal behalf, I extend a hearty vote of thanks to Professor M. Govinda for agreeing and coming from Bangalore to deliver this fourth lecture of Bidyadhar Misra Memorial Lecture Series in spite of his busy and hectic official and personal schedules. Sir, once again I thank you